Welcome back. A bill that would have made nearly 80,000 more salaried employees in Maryland qualify for overtime pay failed to move past its hearing on February 21st. The bill was intended to nearly double the salary cap for white-collar and service workers currently exempt from overtime pay. Jim, what do you think is the best way to handle overtime in Maryland?
Well, that's a tough question. I am on the side of not favoring a minimum wage. Okay. But I got to tell you, I know that there are companies that take advantage of the overtime thing. They put everybody on salary automatically, and then they can work 80, 90 hours a week and no overtime. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you very, very frankly, the reason I'm not in favor of raising the minimum wage necessarily is because I believe that two things. Number one, if you have a strong economy, then you don't have to worry about that because competition for the best employees will raise the wage, the living wage, or raise the wage by itself. I know you're shaking your head no, but trust me, that works. It's proven. On the other side of it, with this overtime thing, this does affect the employees. And again, my other point on the minimum wage is hopefully that's for the starter level jobs, the fast food, the convenience stores, that type of thing. This other thing really affects people at a much higher level, and I think it is problematic, not only from dollars and cents perspective, but also from an economic perspective, and also from a larger economic perspective, and also from a family, a work-home balance thing for employees.
Right. You know, one of the interesting statistics that probably many people don't know, prior to 1975, 40 years ago roughly, 60% of the American workforce was covered by overtime rules. Mm-hmm. Do you know what it is today?
I would bet it's less than half of that.
8%.
Yeah. And that doesn't surprise me at all. And
this is where, with still, wages have flatlined for most Americans since the same period.
Right. So, but let's look at this from an economic perspective. I have a company. I employ 20 people, and I essentially give them enough work that they've got to work, let's say, 60 hours a week to get that done. Okay? So and I don't pay them overtime on that, but realistically, if there were overtime rules in place, I would make the economic decision, because it would become cheaper for me to hire additional full-time equivalent employees rather than paying the overtime.
Now, some people wouldn't necessarily mind that, but also you have to figure the same time period, you know, CEO and executive pay is like 100, 300 times greater than it was in 1975. They're not saving money that way, are they?
No.
The first thing they cut is the poor guy down here. Now, some people would like maybe comp time, 1.5 hours for over. You know, if you needed to,
you can't legally do that.
No, well, not now. No, but I mean, they could make it whatever.
Yeah, but see, there you
we're
get into
talking about laws here.
There you get into a situation where now I'm the employer that all of a sudden has to pay overtime, but I can also give comp time. Guess what, Tom? You're going to work 60 hours this week. There's none of this overtime stuff. You get comp time for it. And by the way, if you don't use it by the end of the year.
I favor that. Some people are saying that. But the point is, we do have a problem. And I agree what you're saying, Jim, is it's a big problem for families.
It's a problem for families.
It's a big problem, and it's a problem
for the economy. And it's absolutely.
So let me.
It's a big issue, if you ask me.
Let me speak on this one for a little bit. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, a lot of people hear salary. They think, oh, you know, that's, you know, somebody that's a manager or somebody that's, you know, working in the IT industry or anything like that. Yeah. The problem that a lot of employees are facing is that they're being classified as salaried for something that's like right at the bare minimum requirements for
or not even the bare minimum requirements.
And it really creates a financial burden on them, because now they are basically, they're classified as a manager or something like that, but they're working so many hours, they're basically making minimum wage.
Well, yes, if you look at it, oftentimes they're probably making less than minimum wage per hour.
They're actually required by law, if a salaried employee works so many hours that they would be less than minimum wage, they're supposed to get compensated for that.
I don't know.
At least that's the last time that I heard.
It's almost
hard to track.
that's impossible to track, because most salaried employees do not report hours.
Right.
They don't do it.
But a number of these now are hourly workers who have been classified as supervisors, and it also prevents them in some perverse way of getting a second job that's something else.
Right.
And getting their foot in the door somewhere else. This is another way to keep employees enslaved, so to speak, because it's a tough choice to make.
I think we're all agreeing on this. So let me backtrack a second. I think there is such a thing as overburdensome regulation, and I think we can all agree to that.
Right.
So you have so much regulation that it gets to a point where you just can't function anymore. By the same token, we have protections in place and we have certain regulations in place because it is naive at best to assume that somehow markets regulate themselves, that banking institutions somehow will not do things that will drive another economic crisis, or for that matter, that individuals somehow will self-police themselves and we don't need a police force because everybody's just going to be great and nice to one another. So we do need to have the problem, and I think it's swung both ways. We tend to have this pendulum swing where we either overregulate and then we have a panic attack, and then we slash all the regulations, we go completely in the other direction, and then stuff starts to fall apart, and then we freak out and overregulate.
And if you look over the last 20 or 30 years, those pendulum swings, as you call them, and I agree with you 100%, are what has caused major financial upset in this country. Starting back with the banking deregulation and the ensuing S&L crisis that happened after that.
In the 80s, right?
The telecom deregulation and all the craziness that happened after that. The CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act, that forced us to force banks to give $200,000 mortgages to people that made $20 a week.
But that's precisely what I think Colin's saying.
Honestly, though, and think about this from a business standpoint. If you're a business owner, what you want is stability.
Is predictability.
You want to say, you want to know that, okay, these are the rules I have to operate by.
Yes.
They're not going to change. I'm going to structure my business to make sure I'm compliant, and then be productive.
Well, and I kind of wonder, and I do kind of lean the way that Jim's saying with the whole minimum wage. Do we really need one? I don't know, but I think that maybe a good way to handle it would be, instead of having the minimum requirement for being overtime exempt or not at a set number, have it as a percentage of the minimum wage. Say, like 1,000% or something like that. I'm just pulling a number out of my head there, so don't attack me on that one.
Think about what it would do to unemployment if these employers that had all of these employees on salary and then had to reverse it and pay them overtime. Think about what it would do to unemployment if all of a sudden it became economically beneficial for those people to hire new employees rather than overworking
their existing
workforce.
And that's the problem.
What would happen to unemployment? And guess what? If unemployment is low, wages tend up.
Right, and I think there is another argument that I think goes right in line with what you're saying, Jim, which is that if you're producing that much, 60 hours worth of labor per employee, then you're almost taking advantage of the system by not paying any more for that additional production.
Absolutely.
And American
honestly,
employees
how productive is that employee going to be once they've been working
60 hours a week?
60 hours a week after week after week.
They're not going to be
American
productive.
employees are the most productive per hour, capita in the world. Their pay has not followed that. They're more productive than they have ever been, and labor's cheap.
I think that this is a major, I think this is something that needs to, and I don't know whether I like the particular bill that didn't come out.
But the issue is very important for American culture, I think. I've seen
the issue is critical.
Right. It's really just a matter of fairness, ultimately.
It's a matter of fairness.
And I think you're going to have the last word on that. But up next, our panel weighs in on the IRS and their use of private debt collectors. Stay tuned.